The duty of leading the march to the cenotaph fell to the band of the Coldstream Guards, accompanied by Chelsea pensioners, British military and civilian service veterans, as well as ANZACs who happen to be based in this country on exchange. It was during the Dardanelles campaign at the Battle of Gallipoli in 1915 that the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps soldiers were first called by their nickname Diggers. The devastating losses they sustained fighting on behalf of the Allies, overwhelmed by Turks, have been seen in the decades since as the moment these militaries came of age. The 25th of April, as a memorial occasion, has now come to surpass even Remembrance Day in the Antipodes. Her Majesty the Queen was represented by her cousin, the Duke of Gloucester, who's Colonel-in-Chief of both the Royal New Zealand Army Medical Corps and the Royal Australian Army Education Corps. Following him to lay wreaths were the High Commissioners of both countries, as well as senior military members, including the Chief of the Air Staff and the Armed Forces Minister, Andrew Robotham, himself a former Coldstream Guard. London's Australian and New Zealand expats also gathered to pay their respects and close the service with their national anthems. Many remarked how proud they were that the British do remembrance so smartly. These commemorations continue now with a service in Westminster Abbey. But it's not just here in London that ANZAC Day is being marked. In a moment we'll have a report from the traditional dawn service in Cyprus's buffer zone. But first, Fiona Weir reports from a memorial in South Korea.
Remembering the fallen of Gallipoli, veterans from Australia and New Zealand were joined by local dignitaries and veterans of the Korean War at dawn this morning for their annual ANZAC Day ceremony.
Well, for all Australians, ANZAC Day is always almost the most important day in our calendar. That's all around the world. But in Korea it's particularly poignant because we have with us a lot of veterans from the Korean War who've come back at this time to revisit the battlefields where they fought over 60 years ago.
ANZAC Day is one of the most important national days in both Australia and New Zealand, a rare example of two sovereign countries sharing the same day of remembrance.
It commemorates the time at which Australian and New Zealand troops landed on the beaches of Gallipoli 98 years ago today. Obviously this was also a British operation, but it's become to symbolise a sort of a coming of age of two young nations, Australia and New Zealand.
Also sharing in the ceremony was Irish veteran Canon Bob Jennings, who served in the British Army as a chaplain during the Korean War.
I was delighted when I came here. I didn't realise that I would have to be involved with this, but it's been a great honour for me.
It was a lovely service, absolutely, very inclusive and a great tribute.
Wreaths were laid by representatives of each nation present, and as tradition dictates on ANZAC Day, a breakfast was served after the ceremony, complete with coffee laced with rum. Much appreciated by the veterans after their early start.
Very good indeed, yes, very good.
Absolutely fantastic. It's something that I will never forget as long as I live.
Very well done. Extremely well done.
For the United Nations veterans who have travelled here from all over the world this week, this will be an ANZAC Day they will never forget. Fiona Weir, Forces News, at the Korean War Memorial in Seoul.
In Cyprus, personnel gathered under the moonlight to pay their respects. At Waynes Keep Cemetery, in the centre of the buffer zone in Nicosia, this divided city became united in remembrance. In the darkness, the sound of the Fijian choir from 17 Porter Maritime Unit soothed the sadness as dozens reflected on the sacrifice made by the thousands of ANZAC soldiers who served.
Against impossible odds, the cream of New Zealand's and Australia's forces committed themselves without hesitation, and in doing so made immortal the name of ANZAC.
This was a service to mark the moment of the dawn landing and the start of the campaign 98 years ago. 2,000 ANZAC soldiers died on the first day and thousands more were lost in the campaign. Tributes were paid to their courage and humour. 98-year-old Harold Berlowitz was among the congregation, a World War II veteran from the 9th Division Australian Imperial Force, who was the first to lay a wreath. High Commissioners and military representatives followed, along with guests who placed wreaths at the graves of the 5 ANZAC servicemen buried here as the sun began to rise.
It's a very special moment, to be able to have the opportunity to represent our country here this morning. And it's made even more special, I think, because of the support that we get from the British military. The service would not be as successful as it is without the participation and support of the British military, and I'm very grateful for that support.
The buffer zone has always been an area of peace between Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot forces. Today it's also an area of remembrance. And with representatives here from all over the world, few can think of a more fitting place to reflect on the service and sacrifice of those who died. Carla Prater, Forces News, in Nicosia.